This series analyzes the emerald tablet using the earliest known Arabic version in translation, assuming a Greek original. The tablet refers to a worldview centered on a fundamental force. This worldview is best interpreted through the concepts of Anaxagoras and, in part, Plotinus. The text also describes an object, later known as the Philosopher's Stone, that was believed to amplify this force. The previous parts explained that the stone was made of green fluorite, which, through an initial preparatory step, was carved and polished into an egg shape, in imitation of the cosmic egg. The reconstructed sequence of events is supported by limited evidence, but it is most likely that it took place in southeastern Thessaly, in the mountains above Hypata, the modern-day Hypate, around 250 CE. The activation work began with the first theme crescent after the mid-May new moon. In practice, this step meant holding the stone toward the sun for a few minutes, several times a day, 3 times for example, over roughly 3 days. It had to be turned slightly from time to time. It could simply be placed in a sunny spot too. It is best to do this in the morning because the stronger ultraviolet radiation around midday can fade fluorite. In technical terms, this stage aims to influence color centers, particularly so-called F centers in a fluorite's crystal lattice through controlled exposure to ultraviolet light. As a result, the stone may brighten or show a more vivid appearance. Moderate UV exposure can enhance color and may deepen or shift hues, especially in green and purple fluorite. Gentle warming of the surface while the core remains cooler may also introduce mild thermal stress. By the end of this phase, the stone is visually altered but remains structurally intact. Its internal coloration may be strengthened and its optical behavior may change. All of this can make it seen as though the sun activates the stone with an impulse of energy, hence the idea that its father is the sun. If it is done near the new moon, the sun and moon are closest together in the sky, as if their union brings the stone to life. In Greek, the sound of the words for smooth and stone is similar to the word for lion. A smooth green stone, a green lion, can seem to devour the sun's light, sometimes even reflecting it back as though it were absorbing the sun's colors. In this sense, the stone appears able to bring down the sun's light from the upper realm. Raising it high in the hand may also have a symbolic role. It marks the intention to reach upward and to carry something of that higher quality down into the human realm to become an agent of what is above. Plotinus used an interesting metaphor to clarify how the principle of the One appears in everything. In his figurative language, the One is like the essence of light, with other words, the light of the lights. The sun, which has its own light, is like Nous, and moon, which receives and reflects the sun's light, is like Psyche, that is soul or life. He said, how could anything be present in anything else unless in virtue of a source existing independently of association? The simplex or absolute requires no derivation, but any manifold or any dual must be dependent. We may use the figure of first light, then following it the sun, as a third the orb of the moon, taking its light from the sun. Soul carries the Nous as something imparted and lending the light which makes it essentially intellective. Nous carries the light as its own, though it's not purely the light, but is the being into whose very essence the light has been received. Highest is that which, giving forth the light to its sequent, is no other than the pure light itself, by whose power the Nous takes character. For Plotinus, the sun is, in a sense, a reflection of abstract light, just as the moon reflects the sun's light. In a similar pattern, Nous reflects the one, and the word soul reflects Nous. If we follow this analogy, treating what is below as darker, what is above as brighter, and the one, or Nous, as the light of the lights, then the sun too can be understood as reflecting that higher light. Creating a connection to the sun can therefore be taken indirectly as a way of connecting to the one. In the teachings of Anaxagoras, the sun is a red-hot stone that exceeds the Peloponnese in size, and the moon has not any light of its own but derives it from the sun. He also said, the moon is beneath the sun and mirror to us. Most likely, the lines of the tablet describe a process meant to activate the stone. First, it is exposed to sunlight, which serves as a paternal, triggering event. Then it is exposed to moonlight, which represents conception. The sun emits its own light. The moon receives, softens, and reflects the sun's light, and it is often associated with change. It also carries feminine associations. Because of the tides, people often assume the link between the moon and the waters. They may have imagined this as an invisible thread connecting the waters to the moon that draws them upward, an influence they might have considered strongest at the new moon. So if the sun and the moon are stones in the sky and the talisman is a stone, then they might have been believed to be akin. And the stone in turn could be imagined as the offspring of the sun and the moon. During the work, the thin crescent of the new moon slowly begins to grow. If the sun reflects the light of the lights, the one or Nous, and the moon reflects the sun, then moonlight can be received as reflected light as well. This step may have been carried out by placing the stone in the current of a mountain stream, where the water surface reflected the moon. Ideally, the stone would be set in a pool with a gentler current, where the flow isn't strong enough to damage it. Flowing water may alter the stone's surface in subtle ways over time, especially along tiny fractures or pores. Fluorite is only very slightly soluble, but prolonged immersion could lead to microscopic smoothing at edges and high points. The water would also keep the stone's temperature stable, reducing thermal fluctuations. A gentle current could also produce visible effects. The crystal's colors may appear richer and its surface looks softer or more velvety. This operation too has lasted a few days, as the moon's crescent grew after the new moon, almost as if the moon had received the stone and was slowly enlarging it, at least symbolically, until the half moon. The first two stages aim upward, toward an ethereal realm that is otherwise unreachable. The sun and the moon are bright heavenly bodies, framed here as the stone's parents. These steps are meant to receive the light of the sun and the moon. The next two operations expose the stone to the effects of the wind and the earth,